To the contrary, if Salahuddin al-Ayyubi were to show up today, we would very likely reject him. So people who are waiting for the Mahdi, waiting for some kind of, spiritual revival from one human, this is not the case.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I was speaking to a brother recently about this project we have to expand one of the Muslim schools here in Montreal. And he was telling me very honestly, and I respected the honesty. He's like, bro, why would we donate for a Muslim school when there are so many other projects in the world, so many other infrastructures and organizations that need our money, that are doing so much more urgent things with the money that they receive, like saving lives, And he's absolutely right that there are countless Muslim and non-Muslim nations in the world that are suffering, and people around the world that are suffering. Poverty, war, famine, disease. And definitely when you're in a room with someone whose legs have been blown off, you're not really planning 5 days ahead. You're trying to help them out immediately. You become very reactionary, and it's very difficult to become proactive in a reactive environment. That being said, it got me thinking, has there ever been a time in my life when Muslims haven't been suffering all over the world? War, famine, poverty. And the answer is no, not in my life, not in the life of my parents. There's never been a time that I could say, yeah, Muslims on earth are chilling. And beyond, just non-Muslims, anybody who's oppressed, anybody who's victimized. And so it brings up the question, are we doing something wrong? What's wrong? This is not normal. Why is this the case? And there's so many answers to this question, but I think one obvious thing is the fact that we don't lack resources. Okay, we don't lack armies, we don't lack food, we don't lack money, we don't lack anything to defend the poor and the oppressed and the weak all over the world. We don't lack any of these things. But that ultimately, we are not the ones who are in control of that victory. And by focusing on all of the resources we need to win, we lose sight of what our true strength is, which is our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Muslims were never victorious or successful in anything because they were so good. We understand as Muslims that all of our success and all of the victory comes only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think it's disappointing that we are so fixated on the small things that we can immediately do within our own selves, in terms of resources and funding and money and aiding the immediate problem, that we don't actually try to fix the long-term problem, which is the state of the Ummah. And the argument I'm trying to make, and that I think is present in the Quran and in the Seerah, is that if you fix yourself, Allah fixes the rest for you. And if we internalize that and we shift from this reactionary, knee-jerk response to every crisis and calamity we ever face, because if we continue to address those on a one by one, we're never going to address all of them, and there are always going to be more. And we shift to thinking, well, how do we make sure this doesn't happen anymore? And how do we make sure that we get out of the state that we're in? Now we're talking long term. Now we're talking solutions. And I hope that everybody who's watching this is among those who are trying to think of these long-term solutions for the Ummah. There's a story in the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Bani Israel with Musa alayhi salam, and we go back to these stories because they're so numerous in the Quran. This one is in Surah Al-A'raf, where the people of Musa said to him, أُذِينَا مِن قَبْلِ أَن تَأْتِيَنَا وَمِن بَعْدِ مَا جِئْتَنَا. They said, "O Musa, we were suffering before you came to us and after you came to us. Like, you haven't actually helped us in anything." You know, this is when they were still persecuted by Fir'aun. They straight up said to Musa, "O Musa, we were persecuted before you came, and then you came, and now we're still being persecuted. Like, what have you actually achieved?" And Musa alayhi salam says something beautiful. He says, "Asa rabbukum an yuhlika aduwakum wa yastakhlifakum fil ard fayanzura kayfa ta'malun." He says, perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Asa rabbukum an yuhlika aduwakum," He's going to destroy your enemies, wa yastakhlifakum fil ard, and He will make you the successors on the earth or in the land. فَيَنْظُرَ كَيْفَ تَعْمَلُونَ. Then He will see. So He will see how you are going to act. What are you going to do with it? And in that statement, he absolutely encompassed the point that we're trying to make now. The idea that عَسَى رَبُّكُمْ, that your Lord, عَسَى رَبُّكُمْ أَن يُهْلِكَ عَدُوَّكُمْ, Allah destroys your enemy. Allah takes care of that. Allah takes care of the affairs. وَيَسْتَخْلِفَكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ, and He will make you successors in the land. But then what? فَيَنْظُرَ كَيْفَ تَعْمَلُونَ. So He's going to see. Allah will see what you're going to do with it. Never is the victory attributed to them. The only thing attributed to them is patience and what you do in moments of weakness and in moments of greatness, in moments of disgrace and in moments of honor, and how you get yourself to a position of honor. And the way you get yourself to a position of honor is not by buying more things and funding more things and supplying more things and getting more things of this dunya, which are all in the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ultimately, the way that you succeed and the way that you gain honor is by honoring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in turn, you honor yourself. So, what's the solution? The solution is we get to a point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deems us worthy of the victory, and we get to a point where if that victory comes, we actually know what to do with it. Because if I were to ask you, say the state of the Ummah was such that tomorrow Palestine is liberated, the Muslim countries around the world start doing well, what's the next step? What are we actually going to do once we have that victory? Is the Ummah ready for that victory? How are they going to deal with the leadership? How are they going to deal with Khilafah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. But if our focus is not on building up the future, it's going to repeat itself. So the solution that I'm suggesting, or a part, of course not the solution, but a part of the solution, that we need to start thinking in that realm, in that domain, along those lines, is that if we want the Ummah to improve, we can't keep just fixing everything that's happening now and ignoring what's to come. You know, we talk a lot about the victory of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, and I encourage you all to watch the amazing lecture series by Sheikh Hassan Elwan, whom we actually flew down here to Montreal to give a course on this topic last year. Incredible lecture series, very short, watch 6-7 hours, total, and approximately, and I'll put the description, and I'll put the link in the description, inshallah. And he really paints the picture, mashallah. If you just watch the first lecture, if you don't want to watch the whole thing, just watch the first 1 hour and 15 minutes, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Sheikh Hassan Elwan basically preaches the idea that at the time of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, and we love to talk about Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, how he was a great strategist and general and leader and spiritual guide and Amir for the Muslims and an amazing Sultan, and he was all of those things. But Sheikh Hassan points out the idea that Salahuddin al-Ayyubi did not exist in a vacuum. He did not exist in silo. He didn't exist without anything else supporting him or anything else around him. To the contrary, if Salahuddin al-Ayyubi were to show up today, we would very likely reject him, and the Ummah would want nothing to do with him. So people who are waiting for the Mahdi, waiting for some kind of, spiritual revival from one human, this is not the case. And he explains that the state of the Ummah before Salahuddin al-Ayyubi was worse than the state of the Ummah today. People literally going to the Kaaba, murdering people, calling themselves God, taunting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, stealing the black stone, removing it from the Kaaba. For over 20 years there was no black stone in the Kaaba. There was no Hajj. Isn't that crazy? Assassins being developed by brainwashing youth. The Ummah split into every single city making up its own nation, to the point that there was no single body of Muslims left to defend against the Crusader army. And then in this terrible, awful kind of a state that the Ummah was in, with no hope of victory, what changed? Well, he actually takes you through the history, and I don't want to spoil any of it, but just to give you a taste, he explains how one man by the name of Nizam al-Mulk had a different idea of how to go forward. And his idea was to start up schools, fully funded, dorms, food, education. It's a whole package, funded by the government. Just come and learn. Come and learn your deen. And what that did was created the likes of Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah and others like him, who became such strong believers and actors in Islam that they were able to build up generations of Muslims that had that conviction in their heart, that had the strength of Iman, that had that love for Allah, love for the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, love for their deen, love for their community, love for their family, love for Islam, love for this opportunity they had to improve the world around them. And that is the generation. That is the generation that Salahuddin al-Ayyubi existed among. And it is that generation who accepted, after much struggle, by the way, Salahuddin al-Ayyubi to be their leader, and who deserved the victory of reacquiring al-Ard al-Muqaddas. So, do I think it's worth it to donate to Muslim schools? Absolutely. Halaqat, youth gatherings, bro. As long as our youth feel far from Islam, we're never going to find success. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years from now, the fruits of the labor from today will show. And if we are neglecting our youth, and we are neglecting the next generations, and we're neglecting the state of our hearts, and we're focusing on every external factor we have some illusion of control over, then we can only blame ourselves when we lose that victory, because we focus on the wrong things. Does that mean we don't donate to crises? Absolutely not. Like I said, when you're in a room and someone's got their legs blown off, what do? You don't start planning 5 days ahead. You deal with the immediacy of the situation, but you don't neglect the idea that there's a reason that person had his legs blown off, and maybe it's time to educate ourselves on how to prevent that in the future, going forward. So for anybody who would like to be a little bit more forward thinking in their approach to benefiting the Ummah, I encourage you to watch the lecture series on the generation of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. And Sheikh Hassan is very particular in calling it the generation of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi and not Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, right? It's not a class on Salahuddin, even though it is. It's a class on his whole generation, because he takes you back to what had to happen first, and throughout the life of Salahuddin, and then what happened afterwards. I'm very excited actually for the new cinematic experience to come out. He's been working with Yaqeen Institute to have like a whole cinematic production value version of the lecture series come out soon, and we'll be bringing him back for his new class on the Mongol invasion and the benefits from that. So a little plug for his course. I'm a big fan of his, so you can watch those lectures, inshallah, benefit from them, and let's try to think a little bit more forwardly, as opposed to always thinking to ourselves, well, what can we do to react to the current state, and instead think of how can we proactively support the Ummah and be among those who create a system whereby Muslims feel close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and change their lives for the better, so that maybe one day we can be worthy of victory and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can honor us in our honoring of Him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honor us and keep us pure, keep us on the straight path, and keep us working for His deen in a way that is most pleasing to Him. اللهم صل وسلم على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون